Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Sam.
And I'm Melissa.
I grew up in the FLDS community. It is a polygamous group run by Warren Jeffs, and I moved out when I was 18 years old.
I was raised LDS. Sam and I have been married for 9 years, have 2 awesome kiddos. And our mission here is to create compassion for communities that are misunderstood, marginalized, and or abused by their leaders, as well as empower those who have left like Sam by giving them a platform to share their stories with the world.
Yes, and we are excited today to welcome our guest, Carleen. Hey there, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Hi, thank you for having me.
And thank you all for being back with us today and for supporting us through liking, subscribing, and sharing our videos. We really do appreciate it.
We are so excited to have Carleen. I have so many questions even before we hopped on here. I'm asking all these questions because I'm so excited to have somebody from Centennial Park, but she has so much more to her story than just being from the other side of the hill. And the other cities just beyond the river bend. So we're really excited to get to share some of her story and what her family dynamic was like.
Yeah, so Carleen, you have a very unique story. You told us that you are you live between both places, the Short Creek area or Colorado City, Hilldale, and then also in Centennial Park. Could you explain to our viewers how it was that you ended up living in both places at once?
Yeah, 3 years before I was born, then the community that was the FLDS at the time in the 80s had split into 2. And my dad's side of the family went with what's known as Centennial Park, and my mom's side of the family stayed with the FLDS, or the Jeffs clan is sometimes what I call it. But Centennial Park, they coined the term second word versus first word. So if that falls out of my mouth, that's because that's how I was programmed.
Okay, so first word's referring to Centennial Park and second word as FLDS, correct?
Actually, other way around, which is kind of weird, right? Yeah.
You would think that you'd want to put yourself first.
Yeah.
Right. You would think so.
Who came up with this?
I don't know. It's just what I was taught from as young as I remember. So yeah, and I was actually born in Hilldale. So I lived in Hilldale, not in Centennial Park, but we would go to church in Centennial Park.
Oh, interesting. So your whole life you were raised in Hilldale?
Yes.
Okay. And do you mind if I ask what your last name is?
Williams.
Williams. Okay. So
yes.
did you live on Water Canyon Street?
Yes.
Okay.
I think I called it Williams Avenue, but
well,
I think it is called that. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I know. Egocentric much?
Yeah. No, I think I know your family, and maybe I saw you around as well, because if I'm picturing the house, you were just right up the street from where we lived. We also lived on Water Canyon there.
Sure. I think I know where your house was, actually. I think I walked past it to school. It's
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So we grew up as neighbors. Fantastic. Okay, connecting the dots here.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And then my mom's, go ahead.
I was just going to ask, you said that you lived in Hilldale, but you would attend church in Centennial Park.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
And you mentioned that it's more fancy or whatever. That's the mansions and stuff over there. I feel like they're Victorian or something. There's this aesthetic about them. And I very much remember that part of it when I was little. I don't know if that's relevant to your question, but
yeah. So and you're referring to the mansions in Centennial Park side, right? Yeah. Yeah. We noticed that it seems like in Colorado City, Hilldale area, there's a lot of big homes, but not all of them are completed or look very fancy on the outside.
Right.
But like you said, in Centennial Park, they all seem to be very, very fancy, very nice homes.
Yeah, it's like night and day. Just a couple weekends ago was the first time that he's ever taken me over the hill. And for those of you that don't know what I'm referring to, in Short Creek, you have Hilldale and Colorado City that are right next to each other. And then it literally is just this little hill. You cannot even see the community on the other side, even though it's 1 mile down the road, not even a mile.
Yeah.
And you go over this hill and you come down on the other side, and it was a whole different world because, like you said, these huge, beautiful houses, very manicured lawns too, because that's another thing in Hilldale. I felt like even the houses that were completed, they didn't really care a lot about the aesthetic of the yards or anything like that. And that was a whole different thing in Centennial Park.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also just a lot to upkeep, especially in Arizona. So.
Oh, yeah. Exactly. I can imagine. So you were raised in Hilldale. And so how often would you visit Centennial Park? Or did you spend most of your time in Hilldale?
I mean, I feel like it was mostly in Hilldale just because of school and stuff. But yeah, for church and for holidays, we'd go to Centennial Park.
Okay.
Or like if they had a community thing for the holiday.
And that was because you had family there that you would go
Yes.
and do holiday with, because maybe when you were a lot younger, there were holidays and things that we would do around Short Creek area and, at the parks and that. But did you attend those out of curiosity? Did you attend the events like the 4th of July and things that we would put on there in Colorado City?
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't remember doing that until after my mom went back to FLDS, the first word.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember doing any of that. Like I remember I would sometimes see like her mom, but I had relatives I never knew I had, and events like that. Like I felt like FOMO, or like I was grieving what I'd missed out on. Kind of
interesting.
With like the Harvest Festival. Like I remember really loving that. Yeah, stuff like that.
Wow. Yeah. So in your family dynamic, were there plural wives? How many moms? How many children in your family?
Yeah. So my dad's actually had 5 wives total, but it's never been more than 4 at one time. And then, yeah. And then in my house, under the roof that I lived under, was only 3 of my moms. There was one that had like her own house. I don't know how that worked. I mean, clearly it didn't, but it worked for as long as it did. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So it's just hard to understand, or I'm trying to grasp. So did you attend any of the FLDS meetings or churches as a young girl?
Yeah, I did when my mom was starting to, I guess, come back to the fold. I mean, she had always wanted to, but for as long as I remember is when she was, I guess, getting brave enough to leave my dad. Then she started taking us to the first word, FLDS.
Okay. So was she already married to your father within the FLDS when the split happened? Is that what I'm understanding? And then he chose to go to the second ward or a Centennial Park group. Is that correct? Okay.
Yeah, his whole family went. So it's just like, I mean, we were like, we had a coined term, which was Wicked Williamses. Like there's just this, there's like this connotation that the Williamses are just bad news. I mean, according to the FLDS.
FLDS, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hate to admit it, but I mean, that's, we were told to stay away from the Williams house because, and I think it was because there was the difference in belief there, and so it was the same for those that lived in Centennial Park. We were told to stay away because they were known as, in our family anyway, as the apostates that had chosen to follow a false prophet or a false leader of some kind.
Exactly. Like I was called an apostate before I knew what it even meant. Because when I think about it, I'm like, I technically didn't apostatize when I was born because I was never part of, so like, yeah, but I didn't know what it meant, but I remember feeling like, I think that's negative. I think that's bad.
Yeah.
So,
oh man.
Yeah.
Was it hard? Because you mentioned that you went to school and things did you go to school? Was there a public school in Hilldale that you attended?
Yes. Phelps Elementary.
Oh, you okay. So that was before Warren took over and shut down all the schools.
It was.
I see. Okay. I wonder if you know any of my older siblings that attended, because I never did. I never had that opportunity. And I'm trying to remember if at some point there must have been a crossover where some of my older siblings were allowed to attend, but us younger siblings were not allowed to attend, and we were told to just be homeschooled. So I don't know when exactly that happened, but I just know, as far as I'm concerned, I was never allowed to attend Phelps Elementary School.
How old were you when it got shut down?
I think I was about 10, but I was actually not there anymore. My mom had already remarried my stepdad.
Oh, okay. So you said that you had 3 moms under the same roof at the same time. How many siblings did you have from your mother, and how many siblings would be in the household at one time?
My mom had 14 with my dad.
Wow. Wow.
And by the time I was born, my oldest sister had already moved out, gotten married, had a kid. And so it was never like all of us under the same roof at the same time. But I don't know. I don't know the math of how many were there. I just know my oldest sister was gone, and very quickly my other siblings left too, like the oldest ones.
Okay. And where do you fit into those 14?
I'm number 9 of my mom's.
Okay. And then did the other mothers have quite a few children as well?
Yeah, let's see. My dad's first wife, actually, she only had 3, which is, I mean, that's a lot, but you know, in California, that's a lot. But but in comparison, she only had 3. And then my dad's second wife had, I think, 12, or maybe just 11 with him. I'm not sure, 12 or 13. I don't know.
Wow.
But yeah.
So
and then the one that had her own house. Yeah, it is a big family, because the one that has their own house has 11 kids. So it adds up to about 40. I think there were 41 births, but 2 of them died as babies. And so I think there's 39 of us living.
Wow.
Yeah.
What were you told as a child about the mother who had her own house? Like, was that considered a good thing or a bad thing for that mother and those children?
It's such a great question, because I don't remember being told much. I remember feeling a little confused, because I'm like, wait, okay, so these guys are my siblings, but they don't call my mom mother. They call her aunt. That was weird to me. You know, I was a little confused about that, but I don't remember anyone telling me that, you know, that it shouldn't be accepted or that it should, you know, nothing like that.
Yeah.
So,
did you treat the children as siblings?
Yeah. I mean, I knew they were my siblings, but I didn't see them as often as the rest of them. So, yeah. And she did live in Centennial Park, actually. So they did live over there.
Okay.
And we lived in Hilldale.
So that would be another reason for you to go over to Centennial Park to see some of your siblings then.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. So out of curiosity, because you were always in Hilldale, which side did you feel most comfortable with or feel most welcome? Centennial Park or Hilldale?
Ooh, that's a good question too, because I remember because it was mostly rejection from the FLDS at school. So I remember not feeling like I belonged there, but I remember really wanting to. You know, I wanted to feel accepted. And in Centennial Park, I don't know how I felt socially. I just knew I hated church because they would yell. And then I could fall asleep when it was boring. You know. Yeah.
So we heard that some of the preachers or the leaders of the Centennial Park group would yell over the pulpit, and some of the same ones that were a part of the FLDS church before would yell over the pulpit when they were a part of the FLDS, and then they created their own group, and I guess continued to yell over the pulpit.
Yeah, I can see that happening. Yeah. One time one of them spilled their water. They were so mad, or they were getting so angry. There was like a glass of water and they like tipped it over. It's like,
oh my word.
Maybe anger management. Yeah. I don't know. But yeah.
Wow.
So being part of Centennial Park group and living within Hilldale, did you wear the typical prairie dresses? Were you allowed to wear different kind of clothing, or what did your clothing and modesty guidelines look like?
Yeah, there was a lot of confusion there too. We definitely did not wear the prairie dresses, although my mom really wanted me to. I remember having a lot of hand-me-downs, and I don't know where they came from. But, you know, it was modest, you know, as in cover to my wrists and my ankles. But yeah, it wasn't the same by any means as far as the prairie dresses or the hair or anything.
So at what age did your mom start to get in good graces with the FLDS church? Because she had left originally with your dad, correct?
Yeah. You mean what age was I?
What age were you? Yes.
Yeah, I was 9.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, so you're fairly young.
Yeah, and even when I moved back in with my dad, he wasn't really part of Centennial Park anymore. So that was it. That was it with my experience with them going to church, except for like funerals. I've gone to a few of those since then, but.
So at 9 years old, you're definitely old enough to know kind of what a lot of the beliefs are in the Centennial Park group. Would you mind sharing a little bit of what kind of some of the expectations for you as a girl in Centennial Park were, and how any expectations might have changed when your mom left and went back to the FLDS?
Yeah, to be honest with you, what I remember the most is mostly what my mom expected of me, which I think was different. It was not united with Centennial Park. And I have felt like even if they viewed me like the brethren is what they call them over there, even if the brethren viewed me as, you know, some sort of, dare I say it, like property, you know, like someone they can farm out to, to their business, whatever they do. I don't feel like they ever saw me that way just because I'm a Williams and we're the bottom of the totem pole. So no one really like looked at me like that I remember of, as far as like, this is what you have to do as a female. It was more, if it did feel more like, oh, you're a nuisance, go away. So,
really?
I mean, no one ever said it, but you know what I mean? Like I felt like,
Right.
like a liability more than an asset kind of thing. So,
man, I'm so sorry well, first of all, for any negative thoughts that I might have had towards your family. I hadn't even thought about how difficult it would be for someone that didn't fit in a way that some of the families did. Like my family, I grew up, my dad was high in leadership. He was one of the, he was the mayor of Hilldale, the city. Mm-hmm. And so I just always felt like I had a place and that I fit in very easily. Mm-hmm. And I hadn't thought about the fact that someone in a family that didn't have that status might not feel so welcome.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like there's added pressure though, even if you're like elite or, from leadership or whatever, like, I feel like there's added pressure there that I didn't experience. So it's a silver lining.
That's true. There might be some things that you're grateful for now that you didn't have to live up to certain standards, especially when the Jeffs took over.
Yeah, totally.
So at 9 years old, your mom, you said, left your dad and went back to the FLDS. Did you get to stay, living in Hilldale through that whole process? Or living with your father? What did that look like?
We actually moved to Idaho. That's where my stepdad's from.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, so I think that was the biggest thing, is just the distance between my parents is what was hard about them splitting up. But yeah, my stepdad was also polygamist. He has 2 other wives. So he was part of the FLDS for like maybe a month. And then they were like among the first people to get kicked out when Warren took over.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
So this is your stepdad now?
Yeah.
Okay. Man. So it was your dad left, and then even after your mom decided to come back, and then your stepdad was kicked out. So this was, just all over the place. My goodness.
It is. Yeah.
So how long were you in Idaho? When you say, for viewers who don't know what it means to be kicked out, they're so far distance-wise that they just lost communication with the church, or were they just in a repentant state, or did they physically have to move?
Yeah, no, we got to stay where we lived. We lived on a farm. And as far as being part of the group, we would go down to Salt Lake every 3rd weekend or whatever, or for the, the 3rd weekend that's priesthood weekend or whatever. We would go to Salt Lake for that, but that only happened, a few times. So maybe more than 1 month, a couple months. But yeah, I remember thinking that was weird to be in the first Word Salt Lake version. That was new.
Yeah, I'll bet. That was a whole different place as far as the way the church was ran. I never experienced Salt Lake, actually. And by the time I was old enough to be involved with many of the different meetings and things, that was about the same time that everything in Salt Lake was moving down to Short Creek. And so I never went to church. I never attended any of the schools or any of that was going on up in northern Utah. Now I'm very grateful that I wasn't a part of it, but it was very different.
Yeah. I hear horror stories too from there. Sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, no, you're fine. When your mother and stepdad were kicked out, were they kind of disenchanted with it at that point and were okay leaving it, or were they trying to earn their way back? And what was that for you as a child? Did you feel like you were trying to earn your way back in too, or? So
for my parents, my mom and my stepdad, I think that, definitely for my stepdad, it was a very mutual thing. It's like, oh, Warren doesn't like me, I don't like him. It was kind of like that. I think my mom felt pretty torn still because she had just gotten back in the good graces of her dad and her family. And so she was actually still trying to hang on to the FLDS. For me, because the only thing that mattered to me at the time was to be accepted and have friends. And I thought that I had that at first with my stepdad's family, because we had gone up a few summers before my mom married him and everything. And and they were my friends and they were cool to me. But the summer I moved there, they weren't anymore. So I don't know. I don't know what I wanted at that point. I think it was just all confusing, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you feel like as a young girl that you were going to end up in a plural marriage?
Yeah. The thought crossed my mind now and then.
Was that something that you embraced the idea of, or was it something that you were afraid of that could happen?
Yeah. So this is kind of a flash forward, but basically what happened was I chose to go back to the FLDS at one point. I was kind of guilt tripped into it, but it was my choice ultimately. I mean, I was 16, so I was a child, but like, adolescent. And so I'm hard on myself is what I'll say for making that choice. I regret making that choice. But while I was there, I felt pretty lost and like I needed a guide. And so I thought that if I got married, then my husband would be like my guide, and so I didn't care if I was like wife number 7 or whatever. Of course, I can clearly see I was very wrong about that.
Right.
Now I can see that. But yeah, I remember feeling that way when I was 16.
So when you say you went back to the FLDS, did you physically move? Or did you just get in good graces? Or what did that look like to go back?
Yeah, I physically moved. Well, first of all, when I left Idaho the first time, I kind of had to trick my mom by at least having her allow me to go live with her dad. And so I did that for like a month or two. But since I had physically moved 600 miles away from her, I knew she couldn't do anything about it if I chose to go live with my dad. So I did. And then we moved to Virgin. Do you guys know where Virgin is?
Yeah.
Up by Zion. Yeah. So we moved there. And so I actually went to Hurricane High School for a while. And then it was during that time that my sister, who was still in the FLDS, basically guilt tripped me into going back there. And so it was very physical movement because it was like from Idaho and then to Virgin and then like back. Yeah, it was like a lot of.
So this was one of your sisters. Was this a full sister or half sister?
My full sister. I don't have any half siblings in the FLDS anymore.
Oh, okay.
Except Centennial, I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So your sister convinced you to go back to the FLDS church. And so was she always a part of it? I'm just trying to understand how you were divided between family and the family kicked out, family not a part of the FLDS. Was your sister always a part of it during this time?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. She wasn't, not the whole time. But what had happened was eventually Warren did tell my mom to leave my stepdad. And so my mom came to live with her dad again. And that my sister was with her at that time. She didn't originally move to Idaho with us, but she, there was back and forth for them too. So my mom did go live with her dad, but then a few months later, she decided that she couldn't do it again. Like she couldn't leave her husband again. So she went back to him. And my sister was actually really angry at my mom for that because she's supposed to choose priesthood, right? So my sister, stubbornly stayed and then felt lonely and kind of made me feel responsible for her loneliness. So, yeah.
And that's why you felt that you needed to go back for your sister then.
Yeah, definitely. I couldn't say no to her. I couldn't let her down.
I understand
that. I'm the oldest sister, so I get that. You feel that responsibility over your siblings for sure. So you're 16. So did you move back at this time? Were you and your sister both living with your grandpa?
Yeah.
Grandfather?
Yeah. Well, whatever. Yeah. But what happened first? He got kicked out not very long after that. So then we had to go live with my uncle. And then she got married after that. So then I was alone by myself.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
Completely by yourself?
Like, in other words, no one else in my family was with me except for my cousins, but not my immediate family.
Okay. And this was now in Hilldale again?
It was Colorado City, but yeah.
Okay.
Tomato.
But back to Short Creek. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's all the same place. So you were back in with the FLDS, living in Short Creek, Colorado City, and now you're by yourself because of all the different moves that your family had at that point.
Yeah.
So through all that moving, was there any point in your own personal spirituality that you kind of doubted what was going on? Or it sounds like there were so many moves and so many big changes. Did you have a chance to even stop and think about how you felt about the church? Or was it more just trying to make it through a whole bunch of changes as an adolescent?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I kind of always, was calling BS, basically. I could smell it, but I knew what was important to me as far as how I felt. Like I said, I wanted to feel accepted. And even with my sister, like I felt responsible for her feelings and guilty because she wanted me to feel guilty. And then when I had made the choice to go back there, I didn't regret it immediately, but I'd see people that were my friends prior to that. And I was like, oh, I forgot about them. And I was like, oh no, what did I do? Because like, it's not like I really wanted to be there. It was just more out of guilt than out of desire. So, and I did feel like I had to recite the scripts and, perform, I guess you could say, to prove that I really wanted to be there, just so that I wouldn't have to deal with the fact that I'd made a big mistake. But yeah, here I am dealing with it. Yeah.
And at such a young age, you can't really blame yourself for just wanting to be accepted, and also wanting to, after being told probably your entire life to believe a certain way, I'm with you there. I look back now and sure, I wish I would have done things differently, but at that age, you just try to follow along and live the best you can.
Yeah, I mean, I am gentle on myself. It's like I shouldn't have had to make a choice like that anyway. Exactly. Like I shouldn't have been cornered to, have to choose that. So
exactly.
I think I see a lot of times, and it's very common for people who have left, like other people we've interviewed, or for Sam, where because you guys grew up with so much responsibility, I think you guys feel like you're so old at 16, right? Like you're thinking about marriage and you're thinking about that you're old enough to make all of these adult decisions. And then hopefully now that you guys are in the real world, or, as Sam now, as we have a daughter, he like recognizes like 16 is not old enough to be responsible for those kind of decisions, or to be getting married, or to be worried about getting married, or any of those type of decisions. So I'm glad that you guys both recognize it now, but I hope anybody that's watching, if anybody is in that situation, realize like you still are a child too, and those shouldn't be your type of responsibilities, because that really is too young for those type of things.
Yeah, it's so true, because if we have a lot of younger siblings, we're kind of parentified. It's like we're their parents too, in a way. And so I feel like that does contribute to, like, if you're 16, you think you're a grown adult. Yes.
Oh man, maybe you had some similar thoughts, but when I must have been 11 years old. I remember thinking, I was standing on the stairs that looked out to our backyard through the window, looking out the window and thinking, I'm ready for marriage. You know what? I can do this, right? Bring me those wives. And I say that because that's kind of the idea of the whole thing, was the importance of getting married. And so at such a young age, I thought, you know what, let's go, let's do this.
Yeah.
For a young woman though, or a young girl as you were out there, maybe it was different. Maybe for the girls, they were terrified that they would be placed with someone at such a young age. I'm not sure. I
mean, I definitely remember being teased, or maybe you'll marry that guy, or maybe you'll marry that guy, So there were definitely some of them that I was like, oh, hell no. No, not that, So it's not like I didn't ever feel that way. It's just, it depended on the situation, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how long were you back in that situation? You're going back to the FLDS, your sister then gets married. How much longer did you stay, and what brought you to the turning point?
I think it was actually 3 years. Although there was a weird thing that happened in that time with my mom, because I was still under 18 and it was just getting crazier. Like Warren was getting crazier. And so my mom freaked out, and she got a private investigator and a cop to help her force me to go back to Idaho with her. So I did spend some time in Idaho during that time, but I was still part of it. Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah. Wow. So Interesting. So your mom disagreed with what Warren was doing, and this was when
At this point.
what was happening at this point that caused her to have this concern?
Well, for one thing, her father getting kicked out, because that meant her parents were split up, and they had previously been together 50 years or something, so like that was a big deal to her. And then, she just thought Warren was wrong for that. And so she started being more critical of him. And she freaked out because my uncle had told her that I didn't want to talk to her, which was true. I told him that I didn't want to talk to her because I thought he meant at that moment, but she took it to mean I never wanted to talk to her again. So she freaked out and got help to come force me to go to Idaho with her till I was 18. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the beginning. I mean, I don't know what year that was, but that'd probably be towards the beginning of any type of law enforcement having to come in and force children to be with their mothers, because now there's so many mothers that are trying to fight to have their children back.
Yeah.
So I can only imagine that battle for your mother at that time was probably pretty intense.
Yeah. One of those mothers is my stepdad's sister, actually. So, yeah. Like one of them that I see on the headlines, I'm like, oh, I know her.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Trying to get her children back now?
I think it's one child, but yeah.
So you were just under 18 and you went back up to Idaho. And this must have been about the time, it sounds like about the time that Warren started changing everything and kicking people out, and just all of the changes started taking place. So did you end up going and staying up in Idaho at that point, or did you come back down?